Biodiversity is one of the most important aspects of life on Earth. It encompasses every interaction between every living thing on the planet. But at present, the planet's biodiversity is in crisis, and we as a species have played our part in its turmoil. Between 1970 and 2014, the planet lost 60% of its biodiversity, and at the same time, the human population virtually doubled. To provide for our ever-growing population, we have drained the Earth dry in a quest for resources, but our remorseless hunger for raw materials has had a devastating effect on the planet, particularly regarding biodiversity.
Around 1.7 million species are known to science today, but the true number could be up to the tens of millions. You might be wondering how biodiversity is in crisis with such a huge number of species alive today. But human activity is driving species to extinction at a whopping 1,000 times the natural rate. So essentially, we have had more of an impact on species extinction in the last few decades than a 10-kilometre asteroid had on the dinosaurs 66 million years ago.
But why should we care about biodiversity? The history of the human race is entwined with fluctuations in biodiversity. Any changes will undoubtedly have profound effects on the future of the human race itself. The Earth is home to a wide range of habitats and biomes, but are they all facing the same losses in biodiversity? Rather unusually, high-income urbanized areas are actually showing an increase in biodiversity, as large as 10%. The urban forest, as it is known, consists of everything from vegetation lining the streets, parks, woodlots, abandoned sites and residential areas and household gardens. In fact, urban areas can harbour more biodiversity than unpopulated country areas. According to the United Nations, 60% of the world's human population will be living in urban environments by 2030, and so the need to recognise, monitor and preserve urban biodiversity will only increase from here onwards.
London is one of the most populous and visited cities in the world. More recently, it has become a global leader in redefining how environmentally friendly and sustainable a large urban city can be. London is regarded as one of the greenest cities in the world, and with a huge 376 open spaces, it's not hard to see why.
London is home to almost 15,000 kinds of plants, animals and fungi, an impressive array of biodiversity to lay claim to. London has been increasingly encouraging biodiversity preservation, and most recently, property development has been targeted. The Biodiversity Action Plan has specified that all future property developments must prove in some way to preserve or increase biodiversity before they can be approved, either through creating green corridors to link isolated habitats, planting more vegetation, or forming nature spaces.
The creation of more green spaces in urban environments has not only proved beneficial to wildlife, but to the humans living here too. In some cases, it's been so successful that local governments have had to take legal action against inhabitants foraging for wild herbs, nuts and mushrooms. As these staple foods not only make a tasty accompaniment to our meals, but deer, birds and small mammals rely on these nutritious foods to survive the cold winter periods.
Roadways and infrastructure are being designed to minimise natural habitat disturbance, and the level of artificial lighting is being gradually reduced. Within city sectors, the use of herbicides and pesticides is becoming restricted, with a push for greener vegetation management such as controlled grazing. Elsewhere, increased public engagement aims to educate the city's inhabitants on how to preserve and encourage biodiversity through the use of bird and bee boxes and garden hedgehog habitats. One issue that has always threatened biodiversity in London is invasive species. We all know about the grey squirrel, native to North America. It wasn't until the late 20th century that they were introduced to the UK. They proliferated and rapidly decimated the native red squirrel populations. Some are welcome invaders, like the Canada goose and mandarin duck, as they have little impact on the biodiversity already present. Modern invasive species include varieties of shellfish and crabs, ruddy ducks, white-headed ducks, and bizarrely, the ring-necked parakeets, which are becoming an increasingly common sight in the skies of London's open parks. Whilst we may enjoy seeing these novelty species, their wider ecological impacts are not yet fully understood. We could be looking at another incident like that of the grey squirrel.
While certain aspects of urban biodiversity are looking positive, in the absence of global action, many species are at risk of imminent extinction. Increased land use change, pollution and elevated climate change means that the future of our planet's biodiversity and that of us as a species is riddled with uncertainty. Efforts to conserve biodiversity are indeed fruitless if we do not tackle and reduce rates of climate change. As of 2018, almost 15% of the Earth's surface and over 7% of the oceans are formally protected. By 2030, it is hoped that 30% of the planet will be protected, and we could be looking at a future of ever-increasing biodiversity, not just in urban environments, but across the globe. If we continue to stress the enormity and irreversibility of biodiversity loss and climate change through public engagement, we may steadily see an improvement. It's not too late.